Hi, I'm Oscar.
Hi, I'm Erwin.
So, Erwin, we're going to talk about some C# today.
Yes.
And what have you got?
So I want to talk today about required modifiers. It's something that's been introduced in C# 11. And basically it helps us with nullable context checking. So a bit in history. A while ago, nullable annotations, nullable context was enabled.
So if you needed to enable it.
Yeah, you needed to enable it, but it was added. So in your CS project file, you got nullable attribute and you could enable it. And what it does, it enabled nullable context. So what does it mean? It checks your code for null reference, possible null reference usage, and then starts giving warnings on those points.
That's the biggest, like they said, the biggest fault in history or something, or the most expensive one. To have nullability in your code, which you can run into runtime, is a big problem. And that what means that these things will help you while coding will help you. It's like, well, this is a possible null. And nullability or the nullable enable will actually help you to point those out in your code. Like there are ways to initialize this thing without setting them. But I see in a lot of code bases, I see a problem, especially for things like strings that are not defined as nullable. It will start nagging on them, and there are so many ways that they can get initialized with constructors, with packing fields, and like it is still a problem, and this will try to solve that, right?
Yes. So I made a small demo to illustrate it. So what I have here is just a person class. It has a first name, last name, phone number. I have nullable enabled, and you see it immediately starts complaining about it. Say, giving me warnings like, okay, its default value is null. Yeah. But you do not set a property, so either make it nullable by adding a question mark after it, or give it a default value like string.empty, for example.
Empty. But like that's mostly not what you want, right?
Yeah.
Because it will get into situations where you can still, because everyone from the outside on this object can just set it to be null again. Because that's why I mentioned string. This is the issue, because age, for instance, it has a side effect, but it's going to be 0 in the default initialization. So this is indeed a normal, straightforward clause. Did we solve this already with records and the init only mark? Like we could, instead of the set, we could do an init and then force through the constructor to say, well, always give this with us. But it doesn't solve all cases, I guess.
No, yes and no. It saves it because it has a constructor. I mean, you can still make it without a constructor, but by default, especially if you use the one-line record, it has a constructor and it forces you to put something in. But if you do some deserialization, you can still
if you throw JSON at it, it will still become null.
It doesn't know if it's in there, so it can still be null inside those things. So you are still somewhat have to check it because you don't always know what's coming from a JSON.
Okay.
Like I made a small demo program for it, so let's make all the strings nullable for now. So because the main thing we had when we want to when we enabled a nullable for our code was should they become nullable, should they have default value, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense.
Yeah, an existing code base, that is quite a chore, right?
Yeah, and the main thing we saw is it doesn't make sense to have a default value. It also doesn't make sense to make them nullable, but those were our only options.
Your serialization example, if you don't make them nullable, the default value will not always default like that, because you can still explicitly null it if you want to deserialize it like that.
So what they did with C# is instead of making it nullable, they added the required keyword. So after public, we can now type required for everything.
Cool, more keywords.
More keywords. And what this means is each property or field that has required for it needs to be set during the object initialization phase. So what is different here? I create a person here, and now because they're required, I see my red squiggly line and says, okay, required member, last name, age, and phone number are missing.
So with new instance of that one, it will actually complain instead of inside the object or the class, where it's like this could possibly go wrong. It doesn't complain anymore because it's pushing you to not initialize it incorrect.
It knows it will be set later on when it's being initialized. So now we have to do it, else the code wouldn't even compile. Like make something nice from it. And the good thing is to know we can still have, for example, a nullable option, and in that case, it doesn't only means it needs to be set, but then we can say set it to null. Still valid.
But it's still required now?
Yeah, it's still required.
So you cannot new without. You need to be explicit.
You need to be explicit.
So also
complains immediately, but you have to be explicit that
same
you
with
want
the int
it.
then, because the default behavior of it just falling back to 0 is gone. But if you explicitly default it to 0, it's fine.
It's fine.
Okay.
So let's write this one back. So that solves if we create the object directly in code. But like I said before, we have, for example, serialization, deserialization. So what I have here is an incomplete person. So it's just an anonymous object. We serialize it, then we deserialize it to a person. Like I can already see age, last number, and phone number are missing on it. So this shouldn't work. So if I run the code now.
Okay, so you took a different type without those constraints in deserialization.
Yeah, because it comes from
I was just triggered a bit.
Call.
Incomplete person really sounds sad, but
yeah. So now we get an error. JSON deserialization was missing required properties. So following last name, age, phone number. So it says to us, okay, I cannot deserialize this because it needs these required properties.
Okay, cool. And this is the system.text.json, right?
Yeah.
Does the what was it? The Newtonsoft JSON also do this, or this is really because it's a compile time thing? It's like use the whole new stack, then this works. Because I'm guessing this is then also in an MVC application or something. It will also do this for you when you're getting an object.
Yeah, I haven't tested personally with Newtonsoft JSON, but the way it's described is the required should enforce that those fields are initialized during object initialization. So it works, I think, also in Newtonsoft JSON. There are some cases where with reflection or something, you can still create a person that completely.
Yeah, if you intentionally start to work around this thing, you will probably find a way. But it's cool to see because that's the two major things, right? It's newing up, newing up in maybe with the dependency injection, or in the deserializing that will create a new record because that is or a new class. So those are the most common things, and these will now result. Well, this is a runtime error still, but it's pretty explicit.
Yeah, but it cannot know this up front.
No, because you don't know what's coming in. This is your dynamic type coming in. So this will help us remove some green squigglies, some exclamation marks to ignore it, and things like that. And this is in which version of C#?
C# 11.
C# 11, and it was bundled with .NET 7. Okay.
Yeah. So you need .NET 7 too.
You need .NET 7. Is there anything you saw on the roadmap that you need further for this, or this is already helping you out in a lot of these cases?
No, I think for the most cases this works for me. I tested it with the Azure Data Tables because we have a lot of objects we grab from there. It doesn't work with those yet.
Okay.
So if
that's a different serializer on the background. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? You need to start in the whole stack and dependencies and libraries. They need to implement this correctly to work. But I think it will help us at least out with everything we create ourselves. And I definitely see some code bases cleaning up from squigglies and things like that, and ignores and exceptions. I think this will help a lot with the discussion around should this be null or in some cases. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always love C# features, and experiment with it, because you will probably run into some edge cases where you do need an exception, and they're therefore there. But this looks great, and I think we have some work to clean up, I think, in the code base. Right?
Yes.
Well, thank you for watching. Check this out. I think it's all in the official documentation. It's a stable release already with the previous C# version. So let's play around with it and clean up our code.
Yes.
Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.